All right, I'm here with Elliot Grove, who is the founder of Raindance Film Festival, the founder of the British Independent Film Awards, very prolific author on Substack, uh, and a very important voice as well. And today, for 20 minutes, we're going to talk about how films and cinema have changed since 1992. And I will time this. So, Elliot, if you want to first start with why this topic and why 1992?
I chose 1992 because that's the year I started doing rain dance. And I chose the topic cinema and how it's changed because I've been old enough, as you can see from my hair, and doing this so long, I've seen some significant changes over the last 34, 35 years, whatever. 1992, I was bankrupt. I had tried property entrepreneurship here in London, England, where I sit tonight. I'd also come from Toronto, where I had worked on a failed medical experiment where you register the pulses of your nerves using acupuncture technique
Hmm.
in something that is still being used and called the TENS machine, TENZ. Maybe you've heard of the TENS machine,
No.
where it's a pain relief thing, where it helps when you have pain. It's because one of your nerves has got a broken, it jumps the brake. Very popular now you can get it for free here in Britain on the National Health Service. You can buy it for like 20 bucks in the pharmacy. Um, and anyway, ended up in London and totally wanting to know what I should do next. I have a wife and two kids. At that time, they were 6 and 8 years old. And it was then I remember the first time I saw a movie in a cinema. Now, I grew up Amish outside Toronto. In the Amish community, we are taught from the time we can walk that the devil lives in the movie theater. But now I
Oh,
was 16 years old. It was harvest season. A part broke down on the farm. I'm the 16-year-old. I get sent into the local village just north of Toronto, Markham, it's called, to the blacksmith to do the repair. When I found out it was going to take 3 long hours to do the repair, it wasn't worth me going all the way home, turn around, coming back. I had a few coins in my pocket. I was 16 years old, hot summer's day, and I was wondering what the devil looked like. And there it was, a few doors down from the house of the Lord, the house of the devil, the movie theater. And I paced in front for about half an hour to see if I could have the nerve to go in. And then I walked up. Back then, Avi, all they wanted was 99 cents to see what the devil looked like. So I paid my money. I walked down this corridor into a big room, a bit like church, with chairs lined up facing the front. I sit down. It's about 2 o'clock in the afternoon. They turned the flippin' lights off. The curtain slowly opened, and the first face of the devil I saw at the most tender age of 16 was Lassie Come Home. And I cried like a baby.
you wrote about this for your inspiration post.
And everyone today asks me for my favorite movie. Well, two things. People, if you ask me right now what my favorite movie is recently, I would have to say it's the one that's being made right now. Because
Hmm.
I don't think the ones that have been made need me to big them up, right? But if you ask me my favorite all-time movie, I'd have to say Lassie Come Home because that's why I'm here today. Um, so back in 92, it was very interesting because if you were a filmmaker, first back up. In Britain in the 70s and 80s, we're making 150 films a year. If you count all the Stake Through the Heart, Hammer House of Horror, and all the Carry On films. But the year I started Raindance, 92, only 6 films that year. One of them, My Beautiful Laundrette. Now, those what had happened was television came to this country in the early 70s, and my guess is that all the filmmakers went from the feast or famine independent filmmaking lifestyle to the work for the BBC and get a paycheck every week. Maybe not as big, but at least you could pay the landlady every Friday night. Yeah. And they stopped making movies. So
Hmm.
that year, 6 were made. And the other problem we had back then is there were two big festivals in the UK at the time. There was the Edinburgh Film Festival, very old, very successful, and the London Film Festival, very old and very successful. But Avi, if you were British and made a British film back then and submitted it, And if they liked it, they would put it in the World Cinema Strand because there were so few British films. So I thought, hey, I'll tell you what, I'll do a festival to celebrate all the new indie films. One of my earliest interns, in fact, my very first intern was a British filmmaker by the name of Edgar Wright. He was only 17. He worked for me for 9 months. And about a year later, I met another guy. He would have been 2021. He had made a terrible mistake at the age of 16. He told his mom and dad he wanted to be a filmmaker, and they went, "No, please, doctor, dentist, accountant." And to keep his mom happy, he enrolled at University College London, just up the street, where he was studying English. And while there, he joined the Film Society because they had a cupboard full of free equipment, and he started making short films. That's when I met him his last year of uni. He then graduates, gets a really dumb job stacking shelves at Boots, the chemist in Piccadilly. And Avi, next time you're in London, Piccadilly Boots is still there. You can go and pay homage. And what he would do every Friday night, he would go back by the film sock. We're still friends, pick up the free equipment, come to my old office in Soho on Berwick Street, and I'd give him the key, and he would shoot Friday night, Saturday, Sunday. Monday, he went back to Boots, stacking shelves, and he did that on consecutive weekends for 9 long months. 93 this was, made a feature film for, those dollars, £4,000, what, $6,000, a feature film called The Following, which he remade in Los Angeles 18 months later, called Memento. So
Amazing.
I kind of knew there was talent on the street. So that's why I started Raindance to celebrate this. And then I found out something that you might already know from your recent trips to London. British people are snobs. They looked at the early Raindance Film Festival. They didn't see a government logo or whatever. You still don't, by the way. And you pretty much ignored it. So what I did in 1998, I decided to do something to celebrate independent films and do an award show because people like partying and getting drunk, right? And then my dear partner, Suzanne Ballantyne, said, why don't you just put the word British in front of it? And that first year was the year of Guy Ritchie and Lock, Stock, and Barrels. It was also the year of The Following, and Guy Ritchie won, and Chris Nolan didn't, and didn't speak to me for about 5 years. And then about 6 months after that first British Independent Film Awards, I get a letter from the British Houses of Parliament saying, you can't put the word British in front of something. I said, why not? Effectively, they said, because we British are so naive, we'll just think it is government ordained with
Huh.
the name British. So I spent 18 months getting letters of support from the greats, Ken Loach, Mike Lee, blah, 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 until we now have the permission to call it the British Independent Film Awards. It was just November 30th here in London. It's a good event. I'm the proud founder. But back in those days, if you wanted to make a film early 90s, you pretty much shot on celluloid, probably 35 millimeter or 16 millimeter, and then blow it up to 35 because that's what the cinemas wanted. And that worked really well until the end of the 90s. There was something called digital.
Yep.
And in 1997, we had your fellow America, Sarah Jacobson, shot a film on a crappy video camera called
Was it the
Sarah,
XL1S or?
Sarah Jane's Not a Virgin Anymore.
Oh, the film.
Sarah Jacobson, she's passed away a few years ago at a very young age, very tragic. And we showed it. I had to wheel in the university projector into the cinema and wire it up to the sound system, and was a VHS tape. It was crappy quality. And we had someone who come all the way from Scotland to the Raindance Film Festival, came to see Sarah James. Sarah Jane is not a virgin anymore. When he walked into the cinema and saw the video projector, he wanted an immediate refund because he had come to see a film and not a video.
I, it's a big topic to cover as to how cinema has changed. I did a little research, and in 1991, you had like Silence of the Lambs, Terminator 2, Beauty and the Beast, Thelma and Louise, JFK, even more independent stuff like Barton Fink and Delicatessen, The Commitments. That was a great year. 1992 had Reservoir Dogs and not a whole lot else that I could find. So did you to try to like go from 1992 to now? Did you have a sense when you were starting Raindance that there was that it was um, as imperative and as a time as you thought, or was it just serendipity? And where has cinema come today? What is your analysis in that regard?
Yeah, I was working on Sheer Fear. I had no idea if anyone would come. In fact, year three, we were so broke. Screen two was a bed sheet hung from the basement bar of the Arts Theatre Club on Dean Street.
Hmm.
Uh, but I just knew, but my, hey, I'm a farmer kid, plant seeds. I kept hoping that Raindance would be something that people watching this would hope to have their films screened, with the hope that their films would get noticed by a distributor so they get some money to pay back their parents, basically. Um, and the first 10 years of Raindance, that worked really well because I cited it in the vacant week between MeFed, the big can-like thing in Milan, which is now gone, and then there was a blank week, and then there was a week, the MIP TV. So I reasoned in my farmer mentality that acquisition executives, i.e. film buyers, would be coming from all over the world to Europe, go to Italy, come to London for that holiday week, send their spouses out to do shopping while they were meeting, and then go back to France for the MIP TV. And those first 10 years, over 60% of the films we screened got distribution deals. It could have been just Brazil, just America, just wherever, but they did. But then what happened is about 10 years in, I couldn't get funding for this film market, basically, from the British Film Institute. Don't get me going on that topic. And so what happened was we came just a festival, hoping to make sure that the jury had enough names on it, that the award became significant enough that they would then attract the attention of an acquisition executive. And that worked really well for 10 years until about 5 years ago, we had something called the internet. And the whole thing has just completely fallen apart. And now we have, as you know, the Netflix, Warner's,
Yeah.
whatever it is, which is a train smash of colossal misfortune. But as filmmakers, as you are, as I am, I think we need to look at the positive side, because if that deal goes through, which it might not, because Netflix has been very clever, they've got Warner Brothers to agree to a $5.8 million kill deal should the deal not go through.
Hmm.
And during the 1 to 2 to 3 year period where Congress and Europe are trying to decide whether to let it go through, Warner Brothers has had to agree not to do any new stuff, which means they basically silenced Warner Brothers, and that they have this huge refrigerator full of some of the most classic cinema we've known in the West for kids or whatever. Yeah. So Netflix has managed to put themselves to the top of the pile. So all that's going on, which leaves you and I and all the, as Ted Hope calls it, non-dependent filmmakers. Brilliant topic, by the way.
Yeah.
Uh, you've got empty cinemas, yay, for festivals. Oh, and your film. Oh, and also we now have the chance to promote our cool shit against all the other bullshit stuff. Pardon my language, but Hollywood is just remaking remakes.
So, I mean, two things that, well, one thing that you and I are both, I think, invested in is you've compared indie filmmaking to indie music and sort of described the lightning in a bottle moment, which I think is a very powerful idea. And you've also talked about authenticity being like the current currency for influence. And I guess I like that you have an optimism toward where those lightning in a bottle moments are happening. And I guess the question is, with all of this happening, with this potential merger or acquisition rather, do you see more lightning in a bottle moments coming from this movement?
I think it's a huge opportunity because it's dividing, it's polarizing the industry. You've got all the producers and all the financiers who want to do the 20, 50, $150 million movies, and all the people like you and me are trying to do stuff for 50,000, 250,000, half a million, right? And what's even more is using the skills that you've learned, that you've taught me, Avi, more than anyone, and Ted Hope more than anyone, how you use social media and influence to drip feed authentic little bits to create an audience. It's all about creating an audience. It's not about millions. It's about hundreds or a few thousand of people that champion it. And of course, depending on the topic, can you go to prisons? Can you go to schools? Can you go to old people's homes? Can you go to rep cinemas around the country? I was speaking to Ted last week. He would like to have the best British, whatever, independent films touring the regional cinemas in select regional cinemas in America, because most of these British films might have a British deal. They might maybe have a European deal, but they haven't got an American deal. And you would have to know better than me whether or not people in your town, your community, your city, your village would like to go to the local cinema on a Tuesday night and watch a winner or nominee from the British Independent Film Awards. You might just want to shell out $15 and go and do that for something different.
Yeah, I think it's hard to say right now. To me, a big issue is distribution. I think getting people to the theater is harder than they realize. And I think that's why 1992 is such an interesting year that you pointed out, and because you had these big budget films that brought everyone to the theater that were also, critically acclaimed, like Silence of the Lambs, and but then you also had Barton Fink and Delicatessen and The Commitments, and both of these worlds were kind of fusing together at that time. And then something kind of happened in the 90s where, yes, there was this sort of renaissance of indie filmmaking. And you talked about Blair Witch, which I think really encapsulated this kind of like, perfecting marketing as a tool to bring people to the theater. But I don't know where film is today in that regard. I think there are some things from the 90s that we have to learn. I don't know if trying to get people back to the theater is the answer, or certainly it's part of it, but I don't know. It's a good topic because I don't know what the solution is, but I do think rethinking distribution might be part of it.
But you know what? It's true. But when I was a teenager, um, I went to go to the theater or even a drive-in because I could get away from my parents. I could smoke a joint, or I could have a beer or whatever without my parents knowing, or neck with my girlfriend in the back seat of the car. Avi, we found out something this June 25. Our box office went up, and it was the 18 to 25-year-old group that went up
But what are they seeing?
because
Yeah.
because they could sit in a cinema and not be on social media for 2 hours.
Yeah. But
I
are
don't know.
are they supporting what films are they seeing would be my sort of maybe a pessimistic approach to that.
Well, they came to Raindance. They're not seeing Hollywood shit. They're seeing the cool stuff.
Well, that's good. Yeah.
Well, what's an interesting question, and I wish I had the answers, but I don't. But the question we all need to ask is the theatrical cinema experience valid? Do people want to sit next to someone who's laughing or crying at the same time as you are? Does it need to be in a cinema with all those rows of chairs with expensive popcorn?
Right.
Could it be in a nightclub? Could it be in I don't know, someone's home with 20 chairs? I do not know. I wish I did.
So we have 90 seconds left to
Okay.
get at the heart of how films have changed from 1992 to today. Um, are you optimistic? Do you think the quality of, or do you think we are about to have a new wave, a sort of renaissance of ambitious authored film?
Thanks to Ted Hope with this NonDē thing, I think the films that will break out and make everyone's heads rock are the ones that are authentic, that are telling stories that break the mold, using story structures that no one else has thought of, and shot probably on a cell phone.
Yeah, I I, I agree wholeheartedly, and I hope that's the case. We certainly have a lot of people out there banding together to try to create a new movement.
Well,
Um,
this Raindance will celebrate your film, and I hope yours is next, man.
I hope so. Well, you're certainly one of the most important voices uh, right now, at least on Substack, without a doubt. Your articles are incredible. For those who haven't read it, uh, read Elliot's articles. And I know you've told me a little bit about Raindance, but we won't. The future of Raindance, which I think is very exciting. Um, and yeah, this has been
Hey,
fantastic.
on parting, Avi, it's
Yeah.
great to meet you. Could we do a post-COVID socially distanced elbow bump?
Yes. And for this format, we're doing 20 minutes. I would love to continue this conversation and have a much bigger conversation down the road, which I hope we will. But
Okay, man.
it was absolutely great to talk to you.
Love you
Thank
and
you so
leave you,
much.
man.
Lovely to
Enjoy.
meet you too.
Take care.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you, Elliot. Bye.
Bye.